comps is so scary, and if you do not get fed, you are just going to be so useless into like multiple frontliners.
All right, well, we'll see how this game progresses. So far, Gemini looking for the early ward over in the Raptor pit, but Team Bliss there with 3 strong are going to deny that, at least for the time being. But it is going to mean that on the bottom side here, Kyling's going to be able to do much the same, and it should give the same rough amount of information that they would have wanted to get up in that top side. One thing I am curious about, however, is the Arcane Comet on the Rumble. Now, at least in past, maybe it's different now, but typically First Strike is the rune that you'd run on champs like the Rumble, like the Kennen, when you are up against just these almost immovable tanks, like the Udyr, right? Because you're not really planning on killing this Udyr, but getting a whole lot of extra gold from that First Strike does tend to feel very good.
The unfortunate thing is, well, I'd say the keystone for First Strike is better than Comet in a lot of these lanes. It's just the rest of the tree is just underwhelming. Like as the Rumble, the blue tree, the sorcery tree is so nice to get the access to all that extra offensive runes, and it just allows him to do much better in the lane. And I think it's extremely important for Rumble to do well in the early game. Find some priority, find some windows for these skirmishes, or just create avenues for his jungler to be able to get active on the map. Because if this game is going to be that even 0-0 state, going into these team fights, besides the Jhin, I think that these lanes will start to outscale.
All right, well, we'll see how things progress. Pretend a lot of early aggression here in the mid lane, and ultimately it will be him with push in this lane phase for the majority of it. And it tends to be when you get to the side lanes that's when Yone can really shine. It becomes a lot harder for Corki to side lane up against this champ, but at least for the time being, there'll be a lot of autonomy afforded to Pretender. He'll be able to match what Gemini's doing if he so chooses to, and otherwise just deny Hayri from movement around the map.
And this is one of the strengths of Yone, the fact that you can take these, very subpar trades and just win through your sustain advantage. We do see the cookies on the side of Pretender, so does have some sustain for himself here, but Yone going to be able to just trade his health for some priority. The sad thing is, the fleet and the absorbed life was nerfed on this patch, so you're not going to get away with it as much as possible. And this is the strength of the Udyr. This is why you want to play Udyr into these champions who just can get priority into pretty much everyone in the game. Whereas you're not going to be an insane champion as the game does scale on. You do can pop that double R in the team fights, create some disruption, especially into 4 melee champions on the side of Bliss.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I can't imagine. Oh, hold up. Possible 2v2 going on down in this bottom lane. Waku is going to be able to dodge out, but he does lose his barrier. It is traded. Violet as well does use his barrier, and ultimately summoner spells are in favor of Frank, but their jungler is on the bottom side of the map. Gemini, he is not going to miss that root. It's going to force out Violet's flash, and all of a sudden this bot lane has turned into a complete disaster as Gemini completely disrupts anything that Team Bliss wanted to do.
And this was my major concern about, the LCO going into these international games, is the fact that if you do trade, everyone will come. Everyone will converge on your position, especially for junglers in there. And we see the fact that Kevi is piling towards the top side and Gemini is piling down. Even though that trade for Bliss was favorable, as soon as that jungle interaction comes through, it's a really, really bad position for them to be in this early game, especially losing double summoners on Violet.
Yeah, double summoners, but also just so much creeps lost, right? Like now we have a double CS advantage here for Waku. It is only 13, which should probably stay roughly the same for the majority of this lane phase, but it does mean that just the early stage of this game for this Jin's going to get so much easier. He gets those team fights and he's going to be pretty much in the position he'd want. As we see a massive trade going down top. I mean, this overheat coming out of Biopanther causing a lot of damage, but now it's him that's in trouble as Jiang goes forward, lands a stun, and there is no flash available for this Rumble. He is just taken out, and that's first blood going over to Gemini.
And so far, we're just seeing Frank playing around the jungler much, they're doing a really good job at forcing these trades, even if they are going to be unfavorable when their jungler's around, because Gemini can clean up these, these kills. He can, tower dive if they overstay, and every single time Kevi is on the opposite side of the map, his laners aren't respecting that fact, and they're getting punished for it. Bio already falling down, losing flash in early game, as the Rumble is such a big deal, because now all of a sudden he has to play the scaling Rumble. If he does play aggressive anymore, he can just be this player who gets repeat ganked, and if you do fall down again on the Rumble in the early game, it is extremely hard to be effective for the rest of this game. Yeah,
absolutely. Kevi, though, he'll use a little bit of this time priority around the bottom side to pick up the Raptor camp. It's certainly something, but you're never going to complain, really, if you're Frank, as you did pick up that early kill and advantages in 2 lanes, ultimately. A lot of that does come down just to the clear speed that the Zyra has. Even post-nerf, it's going to be a whole lot faster than the clear speed coming out of a Sejuani, and Gemini using that tempo very well to advance his top and bottom side. Biopanther looking for a recall here. Lane state is an absolute disaster.
Yeah, this is a extremely tough position to be in as the Rumble. You know, this wave is frozen, but it will eventually bounce. This is on, you know, the close to the Jung side in the lane. So I really want to see if we're going to see, you know, Kevy's going to pile up and cover this dive, because if not, it's just going to be a stacked wave into a potential tower dive onto Bio. And if that is the case, you know, we see the ping happening onto the wave. So this already is a plan for Frank. They do want to punish this, you know, potential dive, or, you know, maybe even bait Kevy up to the top side to cover the wave and just steal away on the objective instead.
Yeah, looking like they're going for these Void Grubs first of all, and there is not going to be a contest coming through. The Kevy, though, I mean, wise to what is most likely happen, he's going to be able to pick himself up this Infernal Dragon and get some Dragon stacking and a potential win condition for Team Bliss. They are finding themselves down 1k gold. The extra help from this Dragon can somewhat minimize that advantage, but certainly things looking good so far for Frank Esports. Is going to take a little bit of time, I guess, for Bliss to get their items online. Ultimately, though, you know, one item coming through for this Yone, one item coming through for the Rumble, and they are probably just going to be in a stronger point of the game, a stronger power spike, most likely around sort of second, third Dragon. And maybe this is where we need to start looking for Team Bliss to try and push an advantage.
And I think Frank is going to be extremely happy with the fact they got away with the trail objectives. You know, you look at Bliss's side, and they want to be contesting. They want to be skirmishing as much as possible. So the fact that it was a trail objectives is really nice for Frank. But with the, you know, Zerk is being completed for Harry, with the level 6 coming through for Bio and Harry in the mid lane, I think at the moment Kevy does ding 6, the moment this ult comes through for himself, they need to start forcing these fights. They need to start finding these advantages. Even getting Alador, you know, some time to run around the map and start impacting these potential 2v2s on mid lane. They just need to start finding these advantages, because if it is just going to be this case of, you know, this straight laning or 3 lanes, I think this gold lead is just going to continue to grow for Frank.
Yep, Kevy, though, he's staying proactive, getting himself in this Raptor camp again off the spawn and trying to find some gold for himself. It's going to be spotted out now from that ward by Pretender, and you know, top side things still not looking so good for BioPanther. He's certainly struggling to find an advantage now that the full Negatron cloak has been picked up for Yijiang, and ultimately is just so strong. Alador popping that aftershock, getting himself a little bit of armor to try and deny any kills for coming through, and ultimately here comes the curtain call. 1 lands, 2 will land onto Violet. Here comes the 3rd, and Violet's going to have to block up 1 more. It costs him his barrier, but does save his support's life, and ultimately is going to lose a whole lot more now as this tower plate goes down, as well as the wave dies to the tower.
And Franco first to the, you know, the skirmish. Gemini is already here. He's already, you know, set up his seeds, make sure he's playing disruption for Kevy, and the fact he can just, you know, play goalkeeper and allow his bot lane to continue to play 2v2 is such a big deal, because there is no 3v3 window for them. And if these lanes keep, you know, losing these advantages that they need to be able to get these skirmishes with the Sejuani, with the Yone in the mid lane, you know, it's just, this gold lead is just going to continue to be extremely one-sided.
Yeah, Kevy getting locked down. BioPanther's here, though. It is going to be a miss there on that Sejuani. Out comes the Strangle Forms and flash in, but what a disaster engage from Alador, because he is taken out. Kevy's trying to get himself away, does have flash available for himself, and most likely should be able to find a way out, does in fact do so, and BioPanther trying to play here and distract, so his support does stay alive, but ultimately it is a disaster. 2 kills going down. You're feeling okay for Bliss that they did go over to Kaiwing, but still just pressure off this map and 4 tower plates going down.
Oh no, the Warmogs is coming. He's going to get it even faster. We do go into the replay here, and I just think this is extremely well played by Gemini. You know, the fact he can react to this, and Bliss just feels so pressured to force something. They probably recognize that if this game state continues like it is, it's just not going to feel good. And the fact that the micro in this team fight, you know, the fact that Sejuani ult does go wide, the combo is flashed, the Violet goes face first into the entire Zyra combo, is never going to be a good case for the side of Bliss.
Yeah, absolutely not. Now we have a lane swap on our hands here as Team Bliss. They got to find gold onto Violet somehow, and this is certainly one way you can look to do so, but it is going to be matched now by Frank Esports as Wako and Kaiwing do path out to that top side. I mean, we have a Leandri's now completed for Gemini, and it's really now become sort of his game to run away with, right? He is so strong. Kaiwing did, you know, unfortunately pick up 2 of those kills for the side of Frank, but it is still just a camp lead, 1 kill, couple of assists, and a big advantage here for the Zyra.
With the, you know, Unleashed teleports coming up really soon, Bio is on the bot side of the map. I would like to see Bliss, you know, play for another skirmish. The fact that Gemini does not have flash is such a big deal. If they are able to find the Zyra, you know, get a kill onto the correct member of Bliss, all of a sudden, you know, this game isn't looking too bad for them. This is a 4,000 gold lead already, but, you know, as you did mention, those 2 kills went onto the Nautilus. they, it is looking rough, but it's not a completely one-sided show yet.
Yep, I completely agree. I think there's angles back in. Gonna have to look for, I think the one-item power spikes would be the most important, as I touched on earlier. We have got the Zeeks coming out of Kevy so far, but that Blade of the Ruined King for the Yone can be a game decider, and the item difference between these AD carries is fairly substantial. Hayri, though, he's going to be up to the play first. He does try and get something going, but the hook from Kaiwing will stop him in his tracks, and Kaiwing kind of in no man's land, but not now that Jung has teleported in. Hayri's going to have to use his Fate Seal to get himself away, as Elodoric will be the first to go down in this team fight. On the top side, though, here comes the Curtains call. Bypans are going to tank up 1, 2, 3, and the 4, but Kaiwing's here looking for Violet, not going to be able to find it, but ultimately, it is going to be another team fight win here for Frank Esports.
Bliss had the jump. They found Walker. They did not connect that with the Fate Shield from Harry or the teleport coming out of Bio earlier. I just think this was a matter of hesitation from the side of Bliss. Probably get to see that one in the replay, but the fact that Walker's able to flash out, reposition, and all of a sudden, Harry's forced to use his Fate Shield to get out of this team fight. It's just going to mean it's so easy for the carries. It's so easy for even Jung to just unleash onto the backline and do so much here.
Yeah, absolutely. And the Abyssal Mask as well was completed there, so just empowering the Zyra even more as we do take a look at the replay.
Yeah, and I think the major thing for me here is the fact that teleport took so long to come through from Bayer, and it did go onto the turret on the top side. So he, had a lot of time. Bliss had this set up. This was a play that they planned, but there's just the disconnection from the players here, and the fact they weren't on the same page is really costing them.
Absolutely. Picture in picture, though, it was Team Bliss who pick up their second Dragon of the game, so that does afford them a lot of time to scale if they're able to deny the Baron. It means that 10 minutes on the clock for any potential Dragon win condition, but I think unfortunate if you're a Team Bliss fan that it is going to be that Chemtech Soul. It's not the kind of Soul that turns a massive gold lead in your favor all of a sudden if you're able to somehow pick up the next 2 Dragons. Hayri going aggressive here, though, does do a reasonable amount of damage, but it looks like now with all the roots coming through and the stuns, it's going to be Kevy that is paying the price. Kaiwing, he takes his third of the game, and this could be the most fed Nautilus I've ever seen.
It definitely will be. He's picking up all these kills. Unfortunately, they're not going against the correct members, but still in the end, as a win for Frank, it's just Kaiwing landing these hooks onto the members of Bliss, and no one is prepared to sack a teammate, right? They keep trying to save each other, and they're just falling down. Kevy unfortunately falling down for the fault of Elodoric there, getting caught out. But I just think when you're in these positions, when you're down so much gold, you need to be ready to just abandon your teammates, because it is so important that this game doesn't blow even more out of proportion, because they still do have some, time left. Bliss, as long as they get to this one item spike, they do find that window where they are going to be pretty even in terms of combat power. Obviously down a lot of gold. I think a lot of that is going to be in the, the top in the jungle, obviously. But as long as they can find this next team fight where they have these one items completed, they do find that engaged, they don't hesitate, that will be that one window back into the game.
There's Kevy's going to be looking to take away this blue buff. An interesting thing that I just saw, and I think it's the first time I've ever seen it, but it's Frank actually picking up 9 tower plates to 0 in response, which at least for me, and looking at just the numbers alone, it feels like perhaps Team Bliss weren't able to react appropriately and find advantages on the opposite side of the map. As very early on in this game, we saw Gemini affecting the top side and the bottom side, and we didn't really have any answer for the opposing side there for Kevy, so that has kind of lended itself to where we find ourselves with such an advantage, right? 9 tower plates worth of gold, and we see it all finished up here. It was 1 answered back by the end for Team Bliss, but ultimately the 9 there, it's a massive difference in that gold. 1,000 gold alone in tower plates means that just by default, Frank Esports are going to have themselves at a massive advantage, and so far it's 7k as the Rift Herald is getting taken by the side of Frank.
And this is just, what it's like when you versus a really good team and they get an advantage in the early game. We saw the fact that Bio fell down and lost his flash and had no TP. So the fact he comes back to lane, every single time he takes a bad trade from that point forward, and he is in a gold deficit, so of course that's going to happen. It's just a window for Jung to just take the plates, and the 2v2 on bot lane, again, another case of the fact that Gemini was there first and he was going to punish the poor trading for the side of Bliss, and it's just free plates for the side of Frank, and just really well coordinated for Frank in the early game, and the fact they're playing around that jungler so well.
Yeah, absolutely. Gemini having a lot of impact here, at least in game number 1. Still, though, I mean, we have the Blade of the Ruined King now picked up for Hayri, so if he is able to spend some time in that side lane, should be able to find some advantages and maybe get himself some gold there on the own. And ultimately, even though, Yi Jiang, very tanky right now, it shouldn't be the worst matchup for Hayri. I don't think it's a winning one just yet. Might need a little bit of resistance and more tankiness to come through. It's not going to be as punishing as it is for the Rumble at the current state of the game.
Yeah, Harry definitely wins his individual 1v1s against both solo laners, but it's when you pull in the junglers and the supports, the fact he cannot get priority anymore. Into Pretender especially, he's going to be doing very well, but, you know, when Gemini is here, when Kaiwing is here, and when the, you know, response from the side of Bliss is going to be there, this is what happens.
Yeah, the flash forward, not going to connect on that hook, but Zhang being here, being first with the ghost, with the teleport, is going to be able to stun up that Sejuani. Kevi will be going down for the third time this game as Frank now. They'll have complete control of this top side and look for damage here on this inner tower. Hayri, you know, the Yone, very good at many things, not good at wave clearing, as he is seemingly going to be able to at least clear out this one. And we do see more attention, though, for Frank towards this mid lane tower, you know, opening up the map a lot. Going to mean that wards constantly everywhere and more of a stranglehold on this game, disallowing Team Bliss from picking up those jungle camps.
Yeah, and this is just, you know, the LCO really isn't used to teams who are good at using their TP, right? And the fact that they pull the trigger on Bliss, who are trying to contest this neutral wave, when they have no, you know, control of the top side of their jungle, is just going to be a death sentence for themselves. And
yeah, talking about death sentence, Hayri, he is going to try and get himself away there with that Fate Seal. He does not have flash, and yep, he's going to delay it a little bit, but ultimately it is going to be a kill once again picked up. This time it's on to Pretender, 2 in the game for himself, as Frank now find themselves at a 7k gold lead, as well as an 8-0 scoreline.
Obviously, if this was a scrim, you'd say GG go next, right? But, you know, this is a game where you do, honestly, in this kind of position, as a team, it's going to be a lost game, but you kind of want to force the enemy team to try their best to win it, right? You're playing that, you know, marathon. In fact, this is a best of series. Obviously, Bliss can go into the next game and know exactly why they lost. You know, in the early game, it's extremely obvious about why this game was blown out of proportion. Obviously, in O's, very different game state. If, you know, that was the case, probably not going to be as one-sided it is right now, but it is a really good learning point, and I think that, you know, the draft they did prepare was good, but the gameplay and, you know, the synergy with their jungler in particular really needs to be there for that second game.
Yeah, and I guess obviously you've had a lot of experience as a very high impact games, high pressure games. Do you think that, like, there's something to be said, you know, if you are able to just delay, you're not necessarily looking for a win in this game, but if you can force Frank to make some mistakes, it's going to lower their confidence going into the second game? Because I feel like, as you see Hayri going down on your screen now, if the game were to end right now, there is no reason for Frank to have any concerns, right? And you want to sort of force some mistakes, force them to have a little bit of question marks in their head going into game number 2. Do you think there's any merit to sort of think in that way?
Yeah, absolutely. You do want to, you know, try force at least a little bit of frustration out of your opponent. I think that, you know, while it's a completely one-sided game for Bliss, it's not really a game you get tilted from, right? Just because it's so obvious why you lost, and it wasn't really, you know, an obvious, or like a team error. I think those are the more frustrating ones, is when, you know, there isn't an instant fix. I just think the level of focus from Bliss could probably go up, or this communication in the early game overall about the jungle tracking, because it felt like Gemini was just appearing out of nowhere, and they're like, oh, the jungler's here, I didn't know that. So I think that, you know, going to that next game, they obviously, you know, have a nice draft in the first game. This is what their identity is. They just need to have that team play.
Yeah, absolutely. They're looking for something here, though. Certainly staying proactive on the map, and Kaiwing's going to face check into them, and maybe they'll find their first kill of the game, but he procs that Aftershock. He gets very, very tanky, and Frank, out of nowhere, they all just appear, and it looks like it might just be a wipe to the other side, as Aladark does have his unbreakable will going, but it's not going to matter as a double kill's picked up there for Gemini. That bot lane of Team Bliss is suffering for what looked like a pick in their favor.
And this is what happens when Nolis gets 3 kills to himself. He can just walk in with these teams shadowing him. A lot of the time in O's, you know, what happens is these supports walk in by themselves and they just get picked off. But, you know, this is an O's, this is the PCS, this is the big leagues, and, you know, the team play is there. Kaiwing has his team shadowing him, and it's just a bait. And the fact that they use these cooldowns to try to pick off this Nolis, who is so fed, is so tanky, it's going to cost him in these skirmishes.
Yeah, absolutely. Hayri able to pick himself up a tower down on that bot side. It was traded, however, for that inner tower top. And Frank, they are very, very strong now, up over 10k gold, approaching the 11k gold mark. It's going to be very, very difficult from here on out. It was obviously the Dragon as well picked up for Frank 2 minutes and a half ago, I should say, as Baron now spawning. And genuinely, I think this Udyr is just so tanky that he could probably just duo it with Gemini if need be, but ultimately they can just 5-man, and it doesn't feel like Team Bliss really have an avenue to walk on. And as Kevy's going to lose his flash, it's the Ghost answered for Jiang. The stun up does come through, and Pretender wailing away as Gemini flashes forward. He does use the root. It doesn't connect with anyone but that jungler, who will go down. And now Biopanther, Aladoric, and Violet are having to run for their lives. They will be able to survive, but it's a 4v5. No jungler, Baron on the map, and it should be going to FAK Esports.
And this will be an easy pickup of the Baron. You know, really see Harry teleporting down to the bot to push that wave out and allow Bliss some time before that, you know, wave does crash into them. But the fact their comp has no wave clear and they are just forced to engage when Frank does set up for this siege, I think means, you know, when this Baron does come forward for the side of Frank, they, you know, are set up on either it's going to be 1 lane or 2 lanes. I think we're probably going to see the game end on this next push. Yeah, absolutely. And FAK Esports, they're so smart, right? They realize what Team Bliss want to do, and they realize they're going to be completely uncontested over at the Dragon. They recall Jung, send Kaiwing down, and you know, you had advantage down the bot side, but it's not going to matter because it's just an absolute brick wall of these two champs that, honestly, even though you have your 80 carry in mid, you're never going to break through. So Frank kind of winning on both sides of the map as they do pick up that Baron and look for that final push. As you say, not a whole lot of structures separating them and the end of game 1. And I really, you know, you mentioned it before, but I do like the Abyssal Master Rush coming out of Udyr. This was like an item you could build on Udyr into, you know, before he was nerfed, before he fell to meta. But, you know, it's nice that it was buff. You know, having that extra 10% shred is such a big deal for these solo AP junglers, and the fact that, you know, you're pretty much doing true damage now to a lot of these champions who just, you know, they don't want to itemize magic resist. It pretty much nullifies Merc Treads. You know, it's nice that you do not have to build these pen items as well. You can just go for these, you know, straight utility items, or these, you know, huge, you know, the large rod items. So I think it's nice that we're seeing some versatility to the mage meta for, you know, tanks as well as, you know, even some of the niche mage items being buffed.
Yeah, absolutely. And now the siege is happening. Hayri trying to find some poke damage, but I mean, Kaiwing's not going to care whatsoever. Out will go this inhibitor tower on the bottom side. Jin doesn't do it the fastest, but will eventually get through it as he hits away with his 4 auto attacks. Pretender as well, pushing in this middle wave as the bot lane inhib will most likely be taken out very slowly once again by the Jin. But it is going to be 2 inhibs. Hook actually lands here onto Kevy, and Hayri trying to find some action onto Wako down on the bot side, but it is going to be the other side of the fight. Kevy going down, and the curtain call coming out. Biopanther, he's not going to be long for this world, and the 4th shot will collect himself a Violet, who did go aggressive on the Zeri, but 5 members strong are FAK Esports. 0 kills to Team Bliss's name, and 1 game on the board, and now best of 3 for FAK Esports.
Yeah, and that's going to be a very, very one-sided performance for Frank, and we're going to have to wait and see how Bliss is going to bounce back. It's, you know, frustrating that they got their on paper best comp and weren't able to perform with it, but, you know, there's still options for them. There's still, you know, the adaptability coming forward in the series because it is a best of.
Yeah, absolutely. And ultimately, you know, it's one of those games where it's like a 2 out of 100 game, you feel, where everything at the beginning of the game just went so wrong that it's like, well, how often is this going to happen? Probably not a whole lot. And as you said before, hopefully it's not sort of a game that tilts you, because I feel, honestly, if the game didn't start so badly, then Frank aren't going to find themselves at such a lead. So yeah, looking at game 2, I mean, pretty much just talking about not finding yourself at such a deficit, playing around where Kevy is more, and I think, honestly, you'll be off to a